On December 1st, 1941, the leaders of Japan decide to open war against the United States on December 8th. Despite the efforts of Japan's ambassadors, the negotiations with the United States reach a deadlock. The next day, the Imperial headquarters informed Vice Admiral Nagumo's air fleet to proceed with the attack by sending the secret code, Climb Mount Nitaka 1208. Commander-in-Chief Isoroku Yamamoto believes the only way to defeat the United States is to launch a surprise attack and deliver a swift and devastating blow to the United States naval forces. Since the end of World War I, Japan has pushed to increase their armament and expand their sphere of influence. Feeling a threat to democracy, the United States responds with both economic and military action by imposing an oil embargo and moving command of the Pacific Fleet to Hawaii. Negotiations for a peaceful settlement open, but in November 1941, they deadlock when the United States delivers an ultimatum with the hull notes. Japan prepares to make a final and fatal decision. After a successful surprise attack against Pearl Harbor, the Japanese score straight victories against the ill-prepared Allied forces. They occupy the Philippines, Malay, and Dutch East Indies within a short period of time. Japan's confidence soars, and they see no reason to fear the Allies. Furious over the assault, the United States waits for their chance to strike back under the motto, "Remember Pearl Harbor." As the United States recovers, they build up their war machine and prepare for the beginning of their counterattack. On July 20, 1943, the United States launches an offensive against Japan with both naval and military forces. Admiral Nimitz heads naval operations in the mid-Pacific, and General MacArthur leads army operations to occupy territories from Guinea to the Philippines. After sustaining heavy damages at the Rabaul base and losing New Guinea and Attu Island, the Japanese abandon their expansionist stance and adopt a defensive position. The Japanese try to regroup by launching Operation Ago and Operation Infall, but even their defensive plans begin to crumble. Although military numbers favor the Allies, the spiritual strength of the Japanese cannot be underestimated. After plunging into war, Japanese forces launched their Southeast Asia offensive to secure supplies and resources. The commanders of the Japanese fleet believe that the success of their next operation will assure Japan's survival in a long-term war. Meanwhile, General MacArthur's Allied Army takes a defensive position in the Philippines, and the British Royal Navy's Force Z, which includes the Prince of Wales, are on the watch off Malay. The first wave of crucial sea battles are about to ignite. On April 18, 1942, 16 B-25s take off from the USS Hornet and bomb Tokyo. Sensing the immediate need to gain control over the mid-Pacific, Japanese Admiral Yamamoto draws up a plan to destroy American task forces with the occupation of Midway. However, the United States breaks the Japanese Purple Code, and Admiral Nimitz has an opportunity to deploy all available forces to Midway prior to the attack. 1 month after the Battle of the Coral Sea, the Japanese and United States naval forces meet once again. In mid-1942, the Japanese began building an airfield at Guadalcanal to sever communications between the United States and Australia. However, the United States lands Marines on the island on August 7th and occupies the airfield before completion. The proudly renamed Henderson Field becomes the center of vicious fighting between the United States and Japan. In the months to follow, tragic battles lay several vessels to rest in these waters, the Iron-Bottomed Sound. By 1944, the United States forces Japan into a defensive position. Japan's defensive perimeter breaks down when their strength at Rabaul is reduced, and New Guinea and Attu Island are occupied. On May 3, 1944, the Imperial headquarters launches Operation Argo, with all remaining carriers and twice as many aircraft used in the attack on Pearl Harbor. In this massive counterstrike, the Japanese plan to utilize long-range aircraft and challenge the Central Pacific Command from a distance outside of American aircraft range. On October 17, 1944, General MacArthur leads the United States landings at Leyte with the support of naval task forces under Admiral Halsey. General MacArthur fulfills his promise which he made in May 1942 when the occupation of Corregidor Island forced him to retreat, and he left with the words, "I shall return." The Japanese Imperial headquarters prepares for the Philippine invasion by launching Operation Show 1. The plan challenges the United States to a massive naval battle which involves high stakes for both sides. The onslaught of American B-29s forces Japanese citizens to endure a life governed by tight rations and leaves the Japanese armed forces with little power to fight. Although the United States cut off Japan's access to resources and leave the Imperial forces short of artillery and fuel, Japan is willing to sacrifice everything. The United States steadily moves in on the Japanese mainland by launching invasions into Iwo Jima and Naha. Japan's defeat seems inevitable, but the final days of fighting will be costly for all. In an attempt to regain territory rich in resources and isolate Australia, Japan launches a renewed offensive in southern New Guinea. With Operation MO, Japan plans to occupy Port Moresby, the key outpost in the south, by using sea-to-land operations supported by carrier strike forces. Perceiving Japan's plan, the United States deploys carrier task forces to New Guinea. The Battle of the Coral Sea becomes the first carrier battle in history, in which no ship on either side sees the enemy. Two months have passed since fighting in Guadalcanal began, and Japan has failed to regain Henderson Airfield. The United States has succeeded in strengthening their military presence on the island and retaining command of the air. To support the struggling land forces, Japanese Admiral Yamamoto orders task forces to bombard the airfield from sea. The United States must counter the Japanese naval forces with only 2 active carriers in its fleet. In April 1943, Japan loses one of its most capable commanders, Admiral Yamamoto, to the war. Following his predecessor, Admiral Mineichi Koga plans a massive airstrike against the United States naval forces at Bougainville. The United States is prepared to face the Japanese with a newly developed weapon, the VT Fuse. Unaware of this new technology, Japan sends its forces against the United States' high-powered anti-aircraft guns.